Perfect. Thank you, Joe. Thank you very much for joining me on the Stay Whole podcast. I had a great chat with you the first time round, so I'm looking forward to having it recorded this time round. So give us a quick introduction as to who you are and what you do.
Thanks, Sanjay. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm currently a junior doctor working at NHS. I'm a foundation year 2 doctor, so I've been working for almost 2 years now. Just quick description of my job role for people who don't really understand how the foundation year works. You kind of rotate every 4 months through different specialties to just get a general feel of things. And at the moment, I'm working in an outpatient psychiatry setting.
Great. So you get to try out all the different rotations on different sort of specialist areas, and you get a taste for what happens in those areas.
Exactly. They try and move you around, get you a bit of general experience throughout all the different specialties, just to make you a bit more well-rounded and give you a bit more experience. Although in the last 2 years, that has been a bit challenged by the whole global pandemic.
Yeah, I'm sure. Did that throw kind of what you had planned in terms of what you might have gone on to do? I mean, how did that affect what your sort of where this foundation year would have planned out?
Yeah, so luckily for me, you're meant to have 6 different jobs. Most people didn't rotate to some specialties. So I ended up doing 5 of my 6 and spent 8 months in one job, which isn't a bad thing, to be fair. It just gives you a bit more experience. But, people were just sent where they were needed during the midst of the pandemic.
Yeah, so it was a baptism of fire in that sense. I mean, and I'm sure I did. I remember at the time here reading about junior doctors being thrown in the sort of deep end, and there was a little, it was oh god, how that must be. But I guess that's just you've got to be prepared for that when it comes to healthcare. But it must have been a tough time for everyone involved.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubting it was a tough and stressful time. But I think a lot of doctors and all NHS staff have a lot of resilience and always up for a challenge, as difficult as it may be. But yeah,
and we need people like that. My wife works in the NHS, and she's in hospital, and she works in intensive care. And I just say I say to her all the time, I said, I cannot believe we've got so many people like you out there, because it's not something, it's just not something I would align to. But the fact that we have so many people like that is a testament to this country and to the NHS itself. So I think it's wonderful.
Definitely. Yeah, I agree with you there.
What just kind of thinking about the motivations? What motivated you to go in to choose medicine as a career? What was the backstory there?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I get asked it quite a lot, and it just takes me back to like interview days 8 years ago now. But I mean, I think going back, it's always kind of a career that was always quite respected, and you'd watch kind of medical shows growing up and you think, oh, that's a cool job. And in school I always had a kind of profound interest in the sciences, and I thought, what can I see myself doing, what do I enjoy doing? And being a doctor just kind of stood out amongst all the other careers in that field. And of course, there's so much value in helping other people. It's quite a rewarding job. And I think that's, it's cliche, but that is the main driving factor, or kind of the foundation. And everyone brings something different to the table. But I think everyone can agree who works in, that field, that it's just the reward of helping others. And again, being a doctor, it kind of puts you in a leadership role when you're at work. Obviously, you work in a team and everyone contributes, but that was kind of another thing I quite appealed to me.
So the idea of actually getting involved and being exposed to having leadership skills and that's something you actually thought about, and that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's just not something that I would typically think someone, again, at that age might be thinking that far ahead in terms of thinking about those skills. So it's obviously something that was important to you. There were some values there which were important. And yeah, I think you're right in terms of the wanting to help. It is a cliche, but I think it's so true, isn't it? And, part of the reason why I gave up a career in the city, to do this and to work in diabetes prevention is part of that. It's just that giving back to people and helping people without without necessarily getting an immediate financial reward for it. I mean, lots of people do lots of things and they get paid for it, and we're not saying that nobody needs to earn money, but there's something different about giving back to people who really need the support and the help, and that just gives you some sort of satisfaction, and it gives you some sort of purpose as well, I guess, in life.
Yeah, definitely. I think people say everyone should try and contribute more than they take away from society, and that's making a positive impact. So I guess it's kind of thinking like that in the back of your mind as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So one of the reasons I wanted to speak to you specifically is the fact that I wanted to sort of learn more about your sort of junior doctor's story and how you've come to where you are now. But more interestingly, you're not just a doctor. So tell us about your other life, doctor.
I mean, so yeah, I think it's probably about a year ago, one year ago, almost 1.5 years ago, that I kind of realized, after kind of 6 years of medical school and working in the field, that we're taught so much on how to treat illness once it comes through the hospital doors. We come across all these patients who have all these chronic illnesses, and some of them, is genetic, it's hereditary, but a lot is, don't want to say self-induced, but there are lots of modifiable risk factors that people have that can reduce their risk of illness. And after working for kind of 6 months, I realized everyone coming in through the door has the same risk factors, smokers, overweight, high blood pressure, raised cholesterol. And you start to realize that, we're almost patching people up in hospital and sending them on their way. So, last year I decided that, how could I make more of a difference to people outside of hospital whilst kind of maintaining my role? And I thought, why not train to be a personal trainer? So why not? It's in line with all my hobbies outside of work, and so that's what I did. Decided to take the relevant courses and exams, and now I'm a qualified personal trainer as well.
Excellent. So you're the PT doctor, and obviously this was something that you mentioned as a hobby, it's a passion. You've been training your whole life, and it's something that you're passionate about. So it wasn't a difficult step to make. But the fact that, again, you linking it to what you're seeing on a day-to-day basis, in hospital, and you mentioned some of those risk factors. And as a personal trainer myself, when I've spoken to people who've come to me, and you go through these sorts of basic health questions, and you're right, you do see those things: smoking, high blood pressure, obesity, are very common. And I've always thought, in the same way that you just said it in a slightly different, is that, okay, that's fine, but where is this coming from? Where is the root cause? And you mentioned, you use the term patching people up in hospital. It's you give someone a tablet for blood pressure. Well, yes, it may bring the blood pressure down, but what's actually caused it to rise in the first place? Can we tackle that? And what I found, through just anecdotally, and I wasn't really thinking along these lines, was when people start exercising, in a gym environment or however, I mean, that's just what I was exposed to. We see these markers come down, and I didn't really link anything. Obviously, I understand the science behind it. I understand, that physical activity can do it. But when you actually see it in the flesh, and then your clients report back to you, "Hey, guess what? My doctor's decided, he's saying he's worried and he's dropping my blood pressure medication because my blood pressure is now too low." When you get stories like that, you think, wow, okay, this stuff really works. It's not, people not just saying, hey, go and exercise, it's good for you. It's real. This is how it works, right? So the fact that you've come at it from that angle is interesting, and now, as you said, you're able to help people in other ways, which is fantastic.
100%. And like you said, it's my kind of hobby outside of medicine. But I think it's also worth, whilst I have you, just make a point that, medical students aren't taught about exercise and nutrition a great deal at all in medical school. In the last maybe couple of years, there's been a push to push, this into the curriculum of all medical schools around the country, but it's still quite poor. I mean, obviously there's an importance in teaching medical students how to be good doctors. I'm not going to take away from that, but I think it's just as important to teach the lifestyle of medicine aspect of things, teach how to get patients to eat healthily, how to get them to move more and exercise. So that's a change on a kind of medical school level that needs to happen as well.
Yeah, and it's not uncommon, is it? I mean, I've heard this from my father and my parents before. They've come back from the doctor, and the doctor's advice has been, look, you need to try to eat a little bit healthier, and you need to do some exercise. And
that's it.
and that's it, right? Exactly. Yeah. And I've said to I remember years ago, I said, well, have you asked them what type of exercise? What should you do? And they're asking me because obviously this is what I do. But I've been interested to know, because I wasn't aware of that until very recently, in the last few years, that actually there's very little physical activity education as part of medical school, and nutrition as well, I guess, is another one which I've learned to understand as well. There's very little understanding on that, yet that's something that a doctor would always say to people, hey, you need to eat a healthier diet, and it all makes sense. But there definitely needs to be a change there. So what I'm interested to know from my perspective as a personal trainer who hasn't become a doctor, so I haven't gone the other way, but when having, I imagine medical school is quite intense. There's a lot of physiology, human biology. You go really deep into the systems of the body and how it works. So, were there things that you learn on it's level 3 PT qualification that you've done, on that level 3 PT qualification? Which, look, let's be frank, it's a good qualification. You can obviously build on that, but it's just a foundation. Anyone can go and learn it and do it. It's very practical. But were there things that you learned there that you hadn't learned in medical school, and that actually you thought, oh wow, okay, this is quite cool. I didn't think of this, or I didn't know this because of my education.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, definitely. There's a lot of physiology in the level 3 PT qualification, and that was quite straightforward. To be honest, we go in more depth in medical school, and that's probably something you'd want to hear anyways. But the stuff that was interesting to me is it goes a lot into training systems and how to train. So that just broadening my knowledge on that, learning about advanced training systems, and how to train in different ways. So that was one aspect of it in kind of the practical application of training. But the bit I kind of appreciated the most and where I learned the most was kind of the goal setting and how to actually motivate people to change on a practical level with a one-to-one setting. They go through goal setting, write down goals, planning long-term, short-term, medium goals, how to motivate people to change, how to monitor progress, all kind of objective measures that people can write down on how they're improving their physical health. It's because, like you said, in medical school, we just learn move more, eat less, out the door. But the course really showed you how you can apply that on an individual level rather than kind of a population level and make a direct change to an individual.
So yeah, it's interesting that you say that. So what I'm hearing is what you learned from that program was more about behavior change, instilling new habits. Because look, if someone wants to get fit, someone wants to change their diet, it all comes down to behavior change. It comes down to instilling new, helpful habits and replacing ones that maybe not so helpful. So it's actually that part of it, and working with someone. Because of course, as a personal trainer, you potentially are going to work with someone over a number of sessions, over a number of weeks, over a number of months. Now, of course, you do that as a doctor, but it's much more sporadic than that, right? And also, let's not forget that you've only got 10 minutes or 7 minutes, or the number keeps going down every time I speak to a new doctor, but or in the GP setting anyway.
Yeah.
So it's that behavior change piece, which again, I think it's certainly probably is included in some way, shape, or form in medical school, but it's very much a part of being a trainer, working with people in that setting, and helping them to get those results, which is ultimately what they're coming to a trainer for.
Exactly, and I think you mentioned the 10-minute consultations, and at the GP level, that's incredibly true. And even in hospitals, as a consultant, you go on a ward round and spend arguably even less than 10 minutes with each patient. So I think it's quite important that on a junior doctor level, where you have a bit more freedom to spend a bit more time with patients, and you can go back to patients when you have a bit of extra time in the day to actually put the time in and talk to them and actually explore these issues with individuals in a work setting, which is something we don't do. If I'm being frank, we don't talk about this at work often.
Yeah, but yeah. So I mean, I think this wave is changing. There's a new wave coming. There's lifestyle medicine. There's lifestyle medicine diplomas and add-ons, and we're seeing more and more of this education coming. So I think it's only a matter of time before doctors are coming out with a much more all-rounded understanding of wellness. It's health is not just being disease free, is it? It's about overall wellness, and that includes mental health. That includes what's happening in our personal lives. That includes physical. It's a combination of things. So I think that's certainly a change that is very much welcome. So I want to get onto this idea of movement, physical activity. So when a doctor does say to someone, hey, you need to, we'll leave the nutrition conversation for another day, but you need to change your diet and you need to be more active or do more exercise. What exactly, are we talking about when we're talking about, when a doctor's asking someone to be active? Are they seriously expecting everyone to join gyms? I mean, now that you're having stepped into that role of physical activity, what's your take on that?
So, we're told to regurgitate that sentence, be active and go do stuff. But if you actually look at the guidelines, there's actually a fairly robust set of guidelines that say what every individual in the country should be aiming towards. So I think every physician, prescriber should know these guidelines, but essentially for adults aged 19 to 64, 65, the government says everyone should aim for at least 150 minutes of physical activity in 1 week. And we should try and do it for at least 10 minutes as a minimum in each session we do, which isn't a lot of activity if you think about it. But the nice thing about the research here is they say aim for at least 150 minutes, but even if you do less, there's still health benefit. So it's not, telling the most sedentary person to go out for 2.5 hours. You can start small and start low and, build up slowly. So, that is kind of the minimum goal, 150 minutes a week of cardiovascular exercise. And the nice thing as well is they consider cardiovascular, but they also talk about strength training. They say every adult should endeavor to strength train twice a week. And that doesn't mean, go to the gym and bench or deadlift or squat or do something that you don't particularly enjoy. This could be anything. They even say carrying heavy shopping bags. If you can do that at least twice a week for a significant amount of time, it's something. So they're quite liberal in what they say you can do, which I think is good because not every form of exercise is the best for each individual, and it's hard to make generalizing comments. You and I like going to the gym, but it would be, you can't tell everyone to go to the gym. It's not everyone's cup of tea.
So 150 minutes of physical activity over the course of the week. If we divide that by 7, it's roughly 21. Yeah, so we're looking at 21 minutes of physical activity each day, which, everyone's life is different. Some people that's a large chunk of time, and I don't have time. And as you quite rightly said, it can be broken down into smaller bite-sized chunks. We're not expecting, the guys aren't expecting everyone to have that 20-minute block available to you. But if we can find a few minutes in our day and we can accumulate this time, and I think this is something also where the gym, sort of the gym culture or the fitness culture kind of, we have this, I don't know where this has come from. It's probably come from the fitness industry at some point in time, but we have this idea of an hour, right?
Yeah.
You go to the gym and it's like, oh, I'm going to be here for an hour. Like an exercise class is an hour. It's like, I don't know where that started or where that came from. And I think recently it's changed where people go, no, we can make more money if we charge for half an hour and with the express classes and all this stuff. Anyway, but we're not talking about a big chunk of time here, are we? And let's just talk about, we'll talk about strength training for sure. We're definitely going to get into that. But that 150 minutes, you mentioned cardiovascular activity. So what would count as physical activity? Because if we'd say cardiovascular activity, automatically people's minds are going towards running, cycling, swimming, rowing, those that are exercise minded. But for those that are not, what constitutes as this physical activity of 150 minutes that they can do?
So on kind of a physiological level, anything that will raise your heart rate. So when we talk about the 150 minutes activity, they actually specify, moderate intensity, and they actually have a long list of exercises which they class as moderate intensity and vigorous intensity. I haven't got the list in front of me now, but from memory, it's not, the easiest of exercise, but walking briskly counts as moderate. Gardening, that might even be vigorous, to be honest, because if you're gardening properly on your hands and knees,
Yeah.
it's tough work. But literally any exercise that gets your heart rate up, so walking briskly, obviously all the cardiovascular typical exercises, running, swimming, cycling, those will all do it. Dancing, anything that gets your heart rate up counts. So people have the freedom to do the activities that they enjoy.
And you mentioned walking, brisk walking, and a lot of people over the lockdown had started walking because there was not a lot to do, and you were only allowed out for exercise. And people are like, what I don't know how to exercise. Well, walking is exercise. I'll go and do that. And yeah, I think it and the idea, and I'm glad you mentioned that intensity level as well, that moderate intensity. And yeah, the heart rate needs to come up, that breathing rate needs to come up. And I don't know if you've used this, but I use something called the talk test. How does one know if I'm working at a moderate intensity? Well, if we're looking at on the sort of the RPE scale, it's 4 to 6 out of 10. Yeah. But again, that's quite hard to put into practicality. So if we use the talk test, is you should be able to talk and hold a very short conversation, but not sing.
Yeah, so exactly.
If you can sing while you're doing your activity, you're not working hard enough, basically. But if you can talk, and you'll feel it. Maybe a brisk walk's a great example, right? You're walking with a friend, you're going for a brisk walk, and your breathing's starting to become a little bit like that. But you're okay. You can carry on for another 10, 15 minutes, and you're good to go. So I like that idea. And yeah, you mentioned a few activities there, but walking, climbing stairs, going up and down stairs once in a while. Not taking the lift, just trying to find these. And there's something I try to just ask people to find moments in your day that don't need to be, exercise. If we look at the definition of exercise, which we actually do, it's something that's structured, it's planned, it's repetitive, and the purpose is to improve one or more components of your fitness. Well, planned instructors is great if you have that kind of lifestyle, but if you can find pockets in your day where they're not planned instructions, like, oh, you know what, I normally get the lift, I'm going to just quickly run. Again, your ability level is going to dictate what you do here, but I'm just quickly run up the stairs, a couple of times, or instead of taking the lift, or I'm going to, get off this bus stop early and walk the rest of the way home today because it's a nice day. Those sorts of pockets where you can find easily that you might just throw away in your day. They're really good ways to try and incorporate that physical activity into your life.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, definitely. And sometimes when people decide to make that change and they take the stairs up 2 floors instead of the lift, they realize how unfit they are. Yes. And they're more motivated to make a change. And I think every opportunity like that, if you can convince yourself to take that opportunity to just use, a bit more energy, a bit more physical activity to get from A to B. I definitely support that. Personally, in the last kind of 6 months with the lockdown, I've been running and cycling from A to B instead of taking the bus or the tube, just for the sake of public health and also my own health.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it's and I think everyone's kind of looked at. I've certainly done the same. I've looked at where can I, improve what I'm doing and use the car less and use public transport less. And so that's these are different ways we need to think outside the box here when we talk about being active. It's not just about going to the gym. Talking about when we're saying being physically active is good for us, we've heard it's good for us, but I guess what we're really saying here is we need to spend less time in sedentary behaviors. So if we think of what sedentary is where we're long periods of sitting where we're not burning a lot of energy. So can we go into some just in sort of a surface level, what's actually happening when we are sedentary? Why is that so bad for us? I mean, we hear it all the time, but maybe people are not clear on as to what's happening when we expose ourselves to these behaviors over a long period of time.
Sure, definitely. I mean, I guess if the best place to start is look at what the evidence shows. So if you look at studies, there aren't many studies on looking at kind of sedentary individuals and how being sedentary affects them. But some of the studies I like to look at go to the extreme, which I don't think is unfair, is when you look at bed rest. so the extreme version of sedentary. So you can compare it to lying in bed watching Netflix all day, or being unwell in a hospital bed. And in these individuals, in about a 1 week period, they lose kind of approximately 10% of their muscle mass in 1 week, and that results in a host of kind of increased risks going forward. But the reason that the sedentary individuals lose their muscle mass is because for the body to keep muscle, it's difficult. People say muscle burns more calories than fat, and that's true. So if the body senses that you're not using your muscle, it's going to break it down and get rid of it. And why is this bad? So from our point of view, it makes you weaker. First of all, you get deconditioned, simple tasks become more difficult, and as a result, the heart muscles get weaker, the body gets weaker, and on a day-to-day basis, people are likely to cope with this. You see lots of sedentary people every day, and they're not overtly complaining of any health problems. They might get a bit more out of breath when walking, or find everyday tasks a bit more difficult. But then this leads to further illness and comorbidity. So this can progress on to heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, and even though low muscle mass, or we call it sarcopenia in medical terms, isn't kind of a bad thing alone, but in combination with all the other risk factors and their increased risk of injury and falling and disability, it's just, the way I view it from a medical point of view, just a massive strain on medical resources, because these individuals will get unwell and eventually will, come into hospital quite profoundly unwell.
It's a classic example. Sarcopenia is a classic example of, if you don't use it, you lose it. Right. And that's exactly what's happening here. And you mentioned it there, you pointed to it, the brain, we recognize, hey, you're not using your muscle, you're sat down all the time. So, and it's expensive for the body to maintain muscle from an energy perspective, because it's
exactly.
Having more muscle mass raises your metabolism. So your body's going to waste it away. So we lower our metabolism by doing that. And as you mentioned there, it's not something that you necessarily feel straight away, because let's face it, the human body is amazing at dealing with everything that we throw at it, right? If we're sedentary, it will figure out a way to let us continue doing the things that we do. If we eat too much, it's going to figure out a way to store it so we can just continue to do what we're doing. You have high blood glucose, your body flushes some of it out through your urine. There's so many examples we could point to. And being sedentary is just one of those that you may not be a smoker, you may have a relatively okay-ish diet, and all you're doing is being sedentary. But at some point in time, that is going to lead to some kind of problem, and it usually manifests, a lot of times with, as you mentioned, heart disease. People just suddenly realize that they go to the doctor, and the doctor says, you have got progressed heart disease, and this can be a problem. It can be a number of other different things as well. Type 2 diabetes, we know, sedentary behaviors increase our chances of insulin resistance, the more fat cells that we have on our body as well. So they're sedentary and overweight together. And these are things that, as you quite rightly said, are things that are preventable, things that we are responsible for as if it's happening in our body, it's something that we can stop from happening just by taking, that we talked about, that guidance, that 150 minutes and just, or starting somewhere, just to break up our day. Because if we think about, and this is the way I like to understand it, is, as human beings, as animals, we were designed to move. We were designed to be on the move all of the time. And technology is a wonderful thing. And look, we're sitting here talking to each other through this screen, and it's great. I can see you and hear you because of technology. But it has taken away a lot of the movement that we naturally did as we evolved.
Yeah, and we talked about kind of being sedentary leads to X, Y, Z, and some people are motivated by, I don't want to say fear, but the fear of X, Y, Z illness. But those are kind of long-term sequelae of being sedentary. Whereas in the short term, just by being active, you can tell people, you'll feel better, you'll sleep better, tasks you found difficult will become easier, your mood will improve, your stress will get better. It's a healthy coping mechanism. And I think these are the things that most people, once they start exercising, they notice sooner, and that's what motivates them to continue exercising. I don't know if it's probably the same for you. When we exercise, we kind of feel the short-term benefits. You just feel better for it. I'm not thinking when I'm in the gym, I'm reducing my risk of bowel cancer, by doing this set. That's the long-term stuff, which is the added benefit, which we know, but it's the short-term and medium-term improvements that I think help people adhere to being active.
Yeah, 100%. You're absolutely right. And look, yeah, I think it's so true that there's always that short term gain. There's always that short term boost, and we know, and I certainly know in my case, I'm not speaking for anyone else here. When I haven't worked out, or when I haven't been for my morning run or my morning stretch, if I've missed it, I notice it. I'm like, oh, why am I feeling this way today? Right, that's why, because I didn't do my movement. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's that short term gain. And I always say this: look, if people ask the question, and how much should I be doing? How much time? How much intensity? I said, look, just go out and do the thing, right? Just go out and do it, and just come back and just see how you feel. Write it down, because that's going to be more important than how many steps you took and what intensity, what level was it, what did your Apple Watch tell you, that how many rings did you fill out. All of that stuff is superficial. If you do the thing and you feel better, do more of the thing. Right? If you did it and it didn't hurt you, you didn't break anything, carry on doing it. And I think if you can just build on that as your motivation, you know what, I did that thing, walking, running, dancing, whatever it is, it made me feel good. I'll just do more of it. And I think that's as powerful as you can get.
I 100% agree. I think people tend to overcomplicate things, and there's a time and place for the science and breaking it down to the actual minute details. But at the end of the day, I completely agree with you. If you enjoy doing it, just go out and do it, and do it a bit more.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter what it is, right? Like you said, it doesn't have to be any of these sort of the stuff that we love doing, and which is it's very structured in the gym, and that's fine. But if it's walking, if it's gardening, if it's dancing, if it's whatever, and I think this is just again anecdotally what I've discovered over this lockdown when I've been speaking to people who have engaged, even just people in my immediate family and friends and who were not active before this. We started going for walks, and suddenly I see on Instagram they're posting pictures of trees and countryside and canals, and their life. They're reporting back, so their life's been transformed just because they started going out for these walks. So, the benefits come pretty quickly. That you mentioned those short-term benefits, and then that's the thing. I think people sometimes have this misconception that I got to keep doing it, and I got to wait for so it's a long game, which it is. There is an element to that, but you can notice some of the benefits very relatively quickly as well.
Yeah, you have to definitely. You have to enjoy it in the present and not worry too much about the future. That will all fall into place. You just need to get started, do what you enjoy, and as you spend more time doing it, you'll start branching out slowly, finding out doing a bit more research into X, Y, Z, tweaking your training in whatever way. And that's how the way everyone starts really. And then you'll develop your own interests and hobbies and pursue that.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So there's the 150 minutes we talked about of cardiovascular activity, moderate intensity, get your heart rate up, get your breathing level up. You should be able to talk, but not sing. Yeah. And then you can just that's the evidence is clear. The studies are there that shows that amount of activity, and as you mentioned, even slightly less, we are getting all the benefits that we associate with being physically active as well. Let's talk about the strength training piece, because I think this is, and I'm glad that this guidance actually, from my understanding, was only changed in 2019, so September 2019, so not that long ago, right? A couple of years. So this is where we include twice a week, do some kind of strength training, and we'll go into that. Why? Let's talk about the why first, because that's probably on a lot of people's lips. Why is strength training so important for everybody?
A million reasons. Don't know where to start. I mean, strength training is important because it builds up your muscle mass. So again, it improves kind of your ability to carry out tasks in the first instance by increasing your muscle mass. By doing strength training, you increase things like your balance and your proprioception. So this is important for young adults, and perhaps even especially important for older individuals who again are at increased risk of falling. strength training and exercise in general is also really good for your joints. There's a lot of mixed evidence out there saying you shouldn't do this because it'll ruin your joints. But from my own research, generally speaking, if you work within the limitations of your pain, so if your joints are painful, then slow down. But otherwise, exercise is good for your joints. I'm just going to keep going here. Another thing that is really important with strength or resistance training is it's good for your bone density. So if you look at older individuals, especially females, when they fall over, the incidence of breaking broken hips is really high. And once you break your hip in hospital, it's got a very high mortality rate. So strength training from as soon as you can will just increase the strength of your bones and reduce the risk of fractures. And people usually associate losing weight with cardiovascular exercise and nutrition, or mainly cardiovascular exercise, to be honest. But strength training does play a role in weight control as well. We talked about briefly earlier how muscles are more metabolically active tissue, so they burn slightly more calories. It's not a massive factor in weight control, but it does play a role. And one kind of example I like to use is if you do happen to be unwell and you go into hospital and you're so unwell that you need to go to intensive care, the intensive care consultant or any consultant will look at how much muscle mass you have, because they know if you go to that intensive care bed, you will lose all of it by the time you come out. So if you go in with nothing, there's a decent chance you might not come out at all. If you go in there with a good amount of muscle mass, the chances of recovery, it'll be tough, but you'll have much better chances. And to put it in a not a horrible way, but you're more likely to get accepted to that ITU bed if you have more muscle mass.
Wow, it's because simply your survival chances are higher.
Exactly. There's a limited number of beds. It's very resource intensive. If they know you're not going to do well, and they're under strain, which we've seen in this global pandemic, it's horrible, but difficult decisions do need to be made. And if you've been going to the gym and you've got a good level of muscle mass, it affects your prognosis and the level of care you will receive, to be honest.
So that's fascinating. I wasn't aware of that last point, but I think some of the other things you mentioned too there, I think are worth just pointing out again. Bone density, that's such an important one because, again, as a trainer and as an instructor, I've heard this so many times. People coming up to me, I can't do this exercise, Sanjay, because of my joints or arthritis or osteoporosis, which is what you're referring to earlier. And look, yes, there are certain things we shouldn't do. Any kind of impact is going to affect those types of conditions where we're jumping up and down, running, is a good example of something like that. But strength training and putting weight through those joints, so weight bearing exercises through joints, if you have arthritis and osteoporosis, actually helps to encourage bone density growth, right? And then this is the evidence is clear here. Or in some cases, there may not be extra growth. There may just be, you maintain what you've already got, so that we're not going to lose anymore. And I think that's a very important factor for people, because this is something we see more and more of, and people shying away from doing things like lifting heavy bags or going to the gym or whatever it might be because of a fear. And again, it just comes down to, if you're not using it, you're going to lose it.
Definitely. I mean, that when I hear people are afraid to exercise because of X, Y, and Z injury, obviously each individual person is different, but from my experience, most of the time, exercise will actually help that condition. They've got back pain. Number one treatment for back pain, movement, getting out and moving. Bed rest is the worst thing you can do for it. Joints that are arthritic, usually some type of movement just helps a bit with the lubrication in that joint. If you work within your limitations and the limitations of the pain it gives you, physical activity is beneficial for all these conditions. I can't really think of a condition off the top of my head where physical activity will impact an individual negatively. Everyone can do at least something to be active.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Actually, we should have mentioned that when we talked about the 150 minutes. But everybody can do something. There's always something we can do, and I think, I've seen and had the privilege of working with people who have been, in wheelchairs. I've had seen people, who've ex army veterans who've come back without limbs, and it's phenomenal what you see them that they can do. So there's always something we can focus on. I think for those that have, for those that do have mobility issues, have injuries, have things that would otherwise you would think, oh, that's going to stop me from doing these things. Yes, there may be walking, running, those traditional things may be off the table for you. However, focus on what you can do, because there's always something. There's always something. And I think if you can just be focused on that rather than the can't do's, then you'll always find something. And again, we'll come back to finding it enjoyable and linking in. But yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I think, and that's why, when we prescribe physical activity to patients, clients, it needs to be individualized. It needs to be tailored. You can't just say everyone do this program and you'll all make progress. Everyone is unique and everyone needs their own specific kind of instruction.
Yeah. And just touching on a couple of other points, so the benefits, we talked about metabolic rate, your metabolism, we can, you mentioned it's not a huge, and you're right, it's not a huge difference in terms of, burning muscle, burning more calories. But again, I like to think of this in the form of, tiny habits, right? And I used this example before. I said, if there's your body, we're talking about your BMR, right? So your BMR is your basal metabolic rate. So the number of calories your body is burning when you are at rest. So if you just lay down for 24 hours, did nothing, you'd have a certain number of calories that your body would burn. And that, again, that's individual for everyone. Now, if we took that same person and put them through a 12-week strength training program, and then we measured that same BMR in 12 weeks or however many weeks it would be, what we'd expect to see is a slight increase, right? So at rest, doing nothing, right? That's what we're talking about, but doing nothing, that person would be burning more calories at rest than they were 12 weeks ago when they didn't have all of that muscle mass. Now, what I say to people is that, think of it this way: in 12 weeks' time, you sitting at home watching Netflix, you're burning more fat than you are today. That's free. You don't have to do anything for it. You can sit there and knowing, I'm burning more fat than I was last month. I mean, that's phenomenal. And I think, yes, it may not be a lot, but if it's every day of our lives we're burning that little bit extra, that all adds up to something, right? So I do think that, yes, it may not seem that much of a big difference on paper, but when you kind of step back a little bit and look at this from a global perspective, a macro perspective, it can be quite significant.
I really like what you said about taking a step back, looking at it like how many from like a year's timeline. People look for quick fixes, but I think the most important thing is building good habits, good routines. Don't overcomplicate it with diet, nutrition, training, sleep, stress, blah blah blah. Do some strength training for 12 weeks. See how you feel. You will make an improvement. And over the long-term period, you'll learn to develop habits, routines that, will make a positive change in your life for the rest of your life. And whereas, people, generally speaking, look for the quick fix, look for the, big calorie deficit, the huge increase in cardiovascular exercise, the fear of strength training, putting on weight, putting on muscle.
Yeah. And look, personal trainers, we're to blame for that. The fitness industry is to blame for that, because ultimately, look, if my marketing and my Instagram was all about, hey, I'm a personal trainer, come and train with me, and in 2 years' time you'll get this. That's not sexy, right? Whereas when you turn around and say to someone, hey, abs in 30 days, or beach body in a month, or whatever it might be, that's what sells. And unfortunately, that's not the reality, because you're looking at someone, even if you're looking at that person, you don't know what they've been doing for the rest of their entire life. They've probably been training for that their entire life, and for you to come to that expectation, or you to be someone to have convinced you that you can achieve that in a very short space of time is very misleading, and ultimately it's not what works when we're talking about longevity, and we talk about sustaining and maintaining these changes that we make. So I think it's so important to just take that step back, and it's a reality check. And I've always been honest with my clients in that way, and I always say, look, if this is what you want in this, and I ask them the question, then this is not what you're going to get. This is about a long-term commitment. It's about making those small changes that you can do. I'm more concerned as a trainer. What are you doing? You're seeing me for 2 hours a week. Well, what are you doing for the other 160 odd hours in the week, right? Because the 2 hours a week with you and me, I can control, or I can not control, but I can guide you to do the things that I want you to do, and I think will be beneficial for you. But it's what you do outside of here that's going to have the biggest impact on your life.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I'm still, I think, I'm fairly new to the whole personal trainer scene, but I kind of promised myself, what I want to give to clients is, make them self-sufficient in the long term, make them not need a personal trainer, make them, educate them on kind of the foundation, the principles that they no longer need me to train them. And then it's how do you get them motivated during the times you're not seeing them, when you're not there, asking them, training with them, ask about their diet. How do you make them, get them invested in their own health, I guess, is the best way of putting it. And that's still something I'm trying to learn how to do.
Yeah, I mean that all comes. I mean, the more people you talk to, the more you see. Of course, that comes with experience as well. But yeah, and again, you've already focused on that in your learning and understood that that's something that is a really that you differentiate from the medical school to personal training level 3. So it's certainly something that will come with a lot more experience. You touched on something there, which is a myth, which I definitely want to touch on. I had something I didn't write down, but because you mentioned, I thought it's worth talking about. Was this. And unfortunately, it's usually females. This fear of strength training is I'm gonna bulk up. I'm gonna be too heavy. It's gonna let's touch on that. So it's a common thing that we hear, and let's get into that. So we can say it straight away that's false, but let's talk about it.
I guess first of all, personally, I wish it was true.
Yes, same here. Absolutely. I wish it was that easy. Look at a dumbbell and my biceps swell by an inch.
Definitely. I wish it was true, but as we both know, it's definitely not true. There are loads of factors that go into strength training and putting on size and mass, and I think it's difficult to say how much a role each thing plays, but I think a big part is genetics, how much food you're eating, and the way you're training. But realistically, I don't have any specific numbers. I wish I did it off the top of my head to say how much mass you can realistically gain in 1 year and 2 years and 3 years. But the truth is, you won't be putting on tons of muscle mass. You will notice a change in the way your muscles look, and if you don't, you're allowed to not like the way you look. I think everyone needs to. It's not a great outlook to have. We should be comfortable in our bodies, and if you're doing physical activity, it's for your health. We should learn to like the way we look. But to think that you'll put on tons of muscle mass in a few months, even a few years, is just physiologically just not possible, really. The body doesn't really work like that. And of course, you get some people with gifted genetics, 1 in a million, 1 in 2 million, who will put on muscle mass quite quickly. And if you're that person, you'll definitely know it. But generally speaking, I wouldn't say you gain tons of muscle mass and you look bulky and to put a name, Arnold Schwarzenegger, you won't look like that after training.
It's not, So there's a number of factors here, right? If we think about what makes a muscle grow, and what are the sort of the ingredients that we need here. Well, there's the type of training, which we'll come on to in a moment. There's how you're doing your strength training, in terms of sets and reps, and there's a formula there that works for muscles, to give muscles the biggest potential to grow. So there's that factor. Nutrition is a big part. You mentioned there, how much food you eat. And I think when you just have to look or watch a documentary and learn what someone like an Arnold Schwarzenegger or these bodybuilders, what their diet looks like, how much food they eat in a day, you'll be most people will be gobsmacked. Oh my God, that's what it takes for a muscle to grow. You need a lot of energy to help that muscle grow. There's of course protein. There's a protein requirement there, which helps to build, it's our building blocks of of a human body. There's that to factor in. And this is something I say to a lot of the female clients that I used to have, is that, there's a testosterone factor there as well. Men are susceptible. They have more testosterone. Testosterone is a key ingredient in muscle growth, and men just have more of it naturally than women. So, women who have this fear of getting too big, getting too bulky, as you said, if it was that easy, then every man would be walking around, looking like that, because that's probably what. I'm not saying all men want that, but a certain population of men do want that, and we see it on health magazines and stuff. What a physique is, and whether that's healthy or not is a different discussion. But so it's not about that. And I always say to people, it's not about being strong to look a certain way. It's about being strong for what you need to do in your life, right? What do you need to be strong for in your day-to-day life? So, think about the things that you have to do and what involves strength. So, if I look at my life, for example, and I break it down really simply, I live in a home with a staircase. I need to be able to climb my stairs multiple times in my day. I've got a daughter. Sometimes she falls asleep downstairs. I've got to be able to climb my stairs with my 20 kg daughter on my shoulders. So it's looking at these types of things in our lives, and if we can just do those things, that will encourage our muscles to maintain, and we get to use them. And then, yes, there are other types of training we could do to keep that muscle mass healthy. And I think flipping it from a aesthetic thing, I think, because that's always. Strength training is often associated with aesthetics, the way we look, with a certain outcome of the way we look. And of course, not everyone is that way inclined. As you said, we should all be comfortable in the way that we look, and that's absolutely fine. But I try to look at it from a wellness. How is it going to improve the quality of your life perspective? I certainly, now as a father, I'm thinking, God, I need to be able to keep up with this one in 10 years' time. And hopefully one day when she has grandchildren, I want to be the granddad who's, kicking a football with her and throwing it, or whoever the grandchild is, doing those things. So that's my motivation now, is to stay strong, is for that, and something to come. So I think if we just switch the picture from the fitness industry and what we see there to the health and wellness industry, I think that can help normalize strength training for a lot of other people.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think everyone has different motivating factors, and everyone has to figure out what that is for themselves. And those motivating factors will change throughout your life, and that's completely fair. You'll have different training goals and aims throughout your whole life. And I think that's what people need to try and figure out for themselves. And just going back to the one point you said earlier, just because it stuck with me when you talk about seeing what these huge guys on social media, or historically what they eat, they look at their diets just to get really muscular and big. And even in that case, there's this whole thing about bulking and eating loads of food just to get big. But most of the time, all those extra calories, if your body's not geared toward building muscle, will just go towards building fat. So again, it's just, essentially overeating. We don't need excess fat stores, to be honest. But then you can also take the argument the other way and look at all the strong men out there who have, a decent amount of body fat, but also lots of muscle. But we're talking about the general population here, not the extremes.
Yeah, because you can, you're right. You can pick up, and I remember this when I was a kid, you pick up these magazines and it has all these meal plans and, bulk, these high protein meals, put on mass meals. And it is a lot of food, you think, and if you're not training in a way that's going to utilize all of that energy and all of that nutrients, then of course, as you quite rightly said, you can eat all the good stuff, call it good stuff that you want. But if you're not using it, it's going to be stored, and that's exactly. Going to be stored as fat.
And a lot of it is just marketing, buy this protein product. But you don't, at the end of the day, that most people who go to the gym probably eat more protein than they should, just because it's been drilled into them. I've been there. I'm sure you've been there. Just trying to get as much protein as possible because we think it'll make a difference. But, it's where I can kind of empathize with others. It's easy to say, look at the research. It's harder to apply it. Yes, in everyday practice.
Yeah. And look, you kind of alluded to this earlier, and I think it's important to touch on it. And you probably have, if not been asked this, you're going to be asked this as a personal trainer. What supplements can I take, and what training gear and all these little things, all these bells and whistles, but these shortcuts, as you that's what they're looking for. What can I do to get to my goal faster? What can I take? What can I add to my diet? And I think going back to the basics, we got to get the fundamentals right. If we're not doing the basics, so if someone's not consistent with their training, for example, and they're thinking about what supplement can I have, or what kind of workout is going to be the best workout for me. Well, at this point in time, it's going to be any workout, but we got to get the basics right. And, from a nutrition perspective, it's very easy. Someone saying to me, oh, is this a superfood? And should I have this bread or that bread? I'm like, hold on a minute. Are you getting 5 a day? And are you drinking 2 liters of water or 6 to 8 cups of water? I've heard of that stuff, but I'm not consistently doing it. Well, you need to do that. That's like turning up at school on day one and saying, oh, I don't want to do this school, miss. I want to go to the year 4. I want to just jump up 4 years. Well, sorry, you can't go up a year until you've passed this year. And this foundation year is 5 a day. And get your water in. From a physical activity perspective, we covered it earlier. 150 minutes of physical activity over the course of the week, moderate intensity. Be consistent with that. Are you doing something twice a week that's involving strength training? Okay, you're doing that. Okay, you've ticked that. You're consistently doing that. Okay, let's try and build on that. What can we get you to do that's going to supplement that, and then we can build on that. And we still got to do all that other stuff, right? That's what got us there. That's your foundation. So until you've done that, all the other stuff, it's just, it's at the top of the pyramid, right? It doesn't really have the biggest impact. It's something that's interesting to me as well.
No, I love everything you just said. Like, exactly. Exactly. There are supplements that they're there to supplement your training. And, I've done a lot of research into it. And at the end of the day, most of the stuff you don't need, everything you can get through, just normal food. Personally, the only supplement I take now is just, 1 scoop of protein powder a day, and that's it. I don't take anything else. I used to, you see the magazines, the social media, all these sponsored athletes taking all these, pills, multivitamins, powders, X, Y, Z. And you think, if I want to look like that, I need to take these supplements. But they got like that before the supplements. And now they look like that. They're being paid to take supplements. If you really want to look into it, I think the most well-researched supplement is creatine. So there's kind of some evidence behind creatine, some evidence behind whey protein. But apart from that, generally speaking, from my research, there's nothing that you can't really live without, or you can't get from your diet. And even creatine and whey protein, you can get that all through your diet as well. So
a well thought out, a balanced diet can give you all the nutrition you need, all the energy you need, all the nutrients you need. There's, to my knowledge, there's not been a massive crisis of protein deficiency disease, whatever that is called in the medical term. It's not something that really exists on a large scale. So people that do worry a lot about getting enough protein if they're training, it's not something as you said, most people are probably having more than they need anyway, because they're already thinking about along those lines. So there's a lot of myth out there, and I think this is why just bringing it back to that basic level, bringing it back to something that's not to do with commercialism, aesthetics, and just making it really, really simple for people. Because I think having now, and it's interesting that I've taken the step from working with private in a personal training setting, in a gym where people, have a bit of expendable income. Of course, personal trainers aren't cheap. And they come to you with a goal. And then, working with people on, similar to yourself now, who, on the NHS, who are coming there with, other issues that are lifestyle issues, there are, genetic issues, there are this disease, trying to get those people to engage in that world. They're just two different worlds. They're very, very different. So you're not going to get someone who's never, the idea of being in a gym or the idea of working out or sweating or putting on, workout gear is just, it's the last thing they're going to do, but they'll happily go for a walk. They'll happily do some digging in their garden. They'll happily, climb the stairs once in a while. And if we can get them doing more of those things and saying, look, you're going to get the benefits from these things as well. And it doesn't have to be framed in this way. I think the better that will be. So there's a lot out there, and I think that's what confuses a lot of people. And when I've spoken to patients who come onto our program about exercise and physical activity, what stops you in the past, and it's like, it's all too confusing, and I get intimidated when I go to gyms because everyone's looks a certain way or they're doing certain things, and it's very off-putting if you're not into that world.
I think that's the massive benefit with being a PT. The clients come to you and they're already at that point of change. They've made the decision that they're ready to change. They're making the first step, usually by contacting the personal trainer. So your job then is to just hold their hand and take them on the journey. Whereas when you again look at the hospital setting and patients who've come in, we refer patients to the exercise referral or dietitian referral. We tell the patients they need to go there. They're not making that choice actively some of the time, most of the time. So then it's arguably more work needs to be put in to motivate that patient to change and find out what motivates them. And that's the difficult part. I think that's the hardest part, is making them or helping them take that first step, seeing getting them to want to change and helping them change. Because once they're in the gym with you, hopefully, or not necessarily the gym, once they're in that setting with you, you can show them the way and the benefits of that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's getting to that point, and I think when you're right, if someone's come to a gym, they already have this expectation. I'm going to be in this gym. This is what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be doing some kind of gym exercises, and and I've had people who've come. They've been almost forced there or pushed there by other people. Maybe that sometimes the doctor. My doctor said I really need to lose weight, and I don't know any other way, so I'm just going to hire a personal trainer. And sometimes there's an expectation on us to be that magic bullet, and ultimately we're not. As you quite rightly said, we hold someone's hand to show them the way. It's not we're not doing the reps. We're not. I wish I could do the reps for my clients and they could get the benefits. But that's not how it works. So I think there's definitely that. And you mentioned once you got them there, we can show them, okay, this is what we can do. So let's get into a little bit of that, in terms of people that, okay, right, I need to strength train. I'm aware of this. This is great. I know there's a lot of benefits there. I don't really want to be going to a gym, certainly right now. I just spoke before we started recording about my experience in the gym in the last week. It's just completely changed. You got to book your sessions. You got to have to wipe down everything. I completely agree why this was done, but having been working in gyms my whole life, I really have not enjoyed going to gyms post COVID, just because that time constraint, and it just felt a little. It's just the whole vibe was different for me. But so for those that don't want to do that and don't want to get involved in that, what can they do? What can people do to start strength training? At home, if that's where they choose to do their exercise.
Yeah, so that's really good. You can strength train anywhere if you have the right instruction or are creative enough, or you're looking in the right places for the right resource and how to do it. But I think this past year in lockdown has been a prime example of people training from home with minimal or no equipment. If you look on YouTube or any social media, there's thousands of home workouts, and I think if you, from kind of a doctor public health perspective, any activity strength work that people are doing at home is beneficial. There's a time and place to dissect each person out there and see the information they're giving and whether it's accurate, whether they're teaching people the best way or giving out false information. But that's a different conversation completely. But just from a population level, if you any video or guide that will get you active at home, so from the very base, like just anything body weight, push-ups, sit-ups, if pull-ups, these are all things that can be done outside of the gym setting. Picking up a heavy book, putting it in a bag, doing some squats, walking up the stairs 10 times, anything that's putting a bit of resistance on your muscles is technically strength training. So yeah, start at home if you don't feel comfortable going to the gym.
Yeah, I think body weight exercises, I think, are the number one when it comes to people who are not that interested in strength training or kind of want to do it a different way or not interested in the gym setting. I just say, look, your body is the biggest weight you're going to have to move around all day long. So just start with that. And, there's a couple of examples you mentioned there. I like the idea of putting in a book and putting a book in a bag or something, and even just going for a walk with a bit of extra weight, that can help. Going up and down stairs, do that 10 times. Yeah, you'll definitely feel that, and your legs will definitely feel that at some stage as well. Sit to stand. This is a very simple one. People like to say, hey, nothing wrong with sitting. You just try and stand up once in a while. And hey, why don't you, while you're there, just do that 10 or 15 times during the ad breaks, while you're watching TV, just get up out of a chair, sit down, get up, sit down, get up. I mean, that's effectively squats for people. So then again, you will feel that. You will notice the difference. So there's so much we could do, using tins of beans, using resistance bands. There's a whole variety. And that's, we are talking about formal exercise, but again, there's all those other things as well, the gardening, the digging the garden, lifting heavy boxes. And yes, there's a technique element. Of course, we don't want people to hurt themselves. So you quite rightly said there is another discussion to be had as to how you find, good advice and good information. For those that are not sure, I would start with the NHS's website. I mean, I don't know if you've been on it, but I think it's phenomenal. If you go on there and you look up physical activity, there's some really good resources there on, how to engage in strength training, things you can do at home. It's all free, and then there's probably links that can signpost you to other resources. But there's lots out there that you can find to engage in, and they all will provide you that benefit of physical activity, which we've spoken about.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, the NHS website is superb resource for anything really, anything health related. You can find it on there, and yeah, they've got all those strength training programs. I think they might even be partnered with the Couch to 5K thing. You can find that on their website now as well, and I think it's aimed towards everybody. So anybody can really uptake the guidance on the NHS website. And just talking about doing it from home, or being a person who's not really into going to the gym or don't feel quite ready to go to the gym, is just finding a friend. Find a friend who you can train with or exercise with, who will keep you accountable, keep each other motivated. I think that makes a huge difference. Training alone from the get-go is extremely difficult. If you're an experienced exerciser, then you can motivate yourself to train alone. But at the beginning, it's tough. So whether it's a friend or like even a PT or an exercise group, having people to keep you accountable is more than valuable.
Yeah, look, I mean, I'll be honest, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you as a personal trainer or even working in this industry if my friend many years and years ago hadn't told me, hey, let's go down to the gym. I want to come with me. And I was like, oh yeah, I was the guy. Okay, yeah, I'll go along, and here I am. So yeah, I think that's a really good one for a lot of people. Just get someone else involved, do something fun with someone else. It just makes it more enjoyable, breaks it up, and you add in that social element. So yeah, that's great. Tell us about so what you're doing now. You mentioned you've qualified as a PT. So are you now practicing, working as a personal trainer as well as a doctor? So your junior doctor is your day job, or probably a little bit more than that, depending on what your hours are like. So tell us a bit about how that fits in.
Yeah, so I qualified at the start of this year, but with my schedule, I recently moved on to outpatient psychiatry, which is 9 to 5, no nights, no weekends, a lot more free time. Prior to this, from December to the end of March, I was working on the respiratory wards, so with COVID patients, doing nights, weekends, horrendous hours. And at that point, I was qualified, but I don't know how I could have balanced training and work and keeping myself sane with my own hobbies that I need to keep up as well. But at the moment, I am training a small handful of clients. I don't think I could take on any more. But it's quite interesting just to get a bit of experience and get myself more exposed to the whole field and learn how the practical side of things work. And at the end of the day, it is a business as well. So learning how the business side of things work is quite interesting to me. I'm actually going to take, so from August, my second year of work is finished, and I'm actually taking a year out to do exams, have a bit of chill out time, and focus on this kind of personal training thing a bit more, take it a bit more seriously, and invest more time into it, and see how I can really link up my background as a doctor with being a personal trainer, and see how much of, a difference I can make, and see how fulfilling it really can be.
It's great that you've kind of found, it feels like you're kind of on this journey to find that, we again, it's cliche, we talk about it all the time, but purpose, you're kind of looking for that. What is so the medical side is one thing, but your passion is really in this fitness, this strength training, and helping people in that way as well. So bringing those two together, there's certainly a lot of crossover. We've spoken about it, most of the early part of this session. So that's a great, it's a great place to be, at such a young age, to have found that. And whether you know exactly what that thing is, it may not be, it's going to be, I'm going to be the PT doctor, but just going down that road and giving yourself that time to do that, I think is great. Taking that year out is going to give you that time and space. It's a big step to make, financially as well. I'm sure that's going to play a part, but
yeah.
it's going to be a fun journey. It's going to be a fun ride. I'm excited for you.
Yeah, because I think the primary prevention is the most important thing. So, stop people before they get sick, and I think doing that, in the community is the most valuable place to do it. Once they get into hospital, it's a bit too late. So, just seeing, I don't know what my end career will be. Some combination of doctor, GP, sports, fitness, lifestyle, nutrition, all merge into one end product. But I kind of like having the year off to experiment, and a lot of medical professionals plan out their whole life. They know exactly what they want to do, what specialty they want to be in. But I think this is a newish field in terms of the importance put upon it. So I'm keen to explore all the avenues.
Yeah, it's an ever evolving field, as you said. It is very new, and I think it's great that look, and that structured path is great. People, again, everyone is wired a different way, but I think you kind of sense this. There's something here. There's something merging with these worlds within health and wellness. The fitness industry, the medical industry, the coaching industry, the holistic, Ayurvedic medicine. All of this all kind of coming together, isn't it? Mindfulness is coming into it. There's so many different sort of mergers of cultures, and science is getting better. We can look at people's brains and find out what happens when they are mindful and doing all these other things. So I think you kind of sense that there's something happening here, and I definitely can be a part of it. And yeah, like I said, even from this perspective, I think it's exciting. I love talking to medical professionals who are thinking outside of what you are taught in that medical school, in that medical sort of education, which again I know is evolving. So I'm excited about that. So it's great that as I said, you're giving yourself that space and time. So I just wish you all the best of luck. It's going to be exciting to see that journey grow. Where can people find out what you're up to, what you're doing? Where can people reach you?
So at the moment, I guess the place I spend most of my time online is on Instagram. So my current thing is at thefitlife.doctor. So that's where I kind of post most of my things. I have a website, but that's kind of just separate for the PT things, and nothing too interesting on there. But mainly Instagram is kind of where I'm trying to, build up kind of my presence, and see how much of an impact I can make.
The Fit Life Doctor. I urge you people to check it out. It's a great site. That's how I discovered you. Anyway, was through there. And recently I'm really enjoying your you're putting a lot of people to shame in terms of working out. Doing your strength training outdoors in the rain. I mean, come on, that's. I was watching that the other day. I was like, oh my god, this guy's making me feel really bad, because just going out for a bike ride in the rain, sends shivers down my spine. So go and check it out. You'll get lots of great motivation from there as well, and you can check out Joe's own personal home gym that he's set up there, which is great. Joe, thanks very much for your time this evening. Really, really great talking to you. I wish you all the best of luck with your journey, your goals, and it's really exciting. I'm excited to sort of learn more about it, and maybe we'll come back again and talk about it all someday.
Thanks, Andrew. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you, and thank you for having me.